You're listening to the Journey Podcast. What if the journey to finding yourself begins with the courage to lose sight of the shore? Stay tuned for today's episode. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we explore the profound journey of women transitioning into motherhood and the challenges it brings to their sense of self, especially within their careers. We discuss the complex process of navigating identity shifts, the struggle to maintain professional aspirations, and the often unspoken sacrifices made. Whitney Baker is the founder of Electric Ideas, a mission-based company dedicated to lighting women up with a new sense of possibility. Whitney is a certified meditation teacher, women's group facilitator, retreat partner, and writer. She also hosts the weekly Electric Ideas podcast, which is ranked globally among the top 3% listened to podcasts. You may know Whitney as an upbeat, free-spirited force through her podcast, or if you hang out with her on Instagram. But you may not know that in a former life, she was a journalist turned global marketing agency creative who upended it all to stay at home with her kids. During that transition, she felt isolated and anxious that she was going to lose footing in the professional world and squander her hard-earned master's degree. She struggled deeply to navigate this murky identity shift that no one seemed to be talking about. Whitney knows what it's like to leave behind one version of yourself for another and feel caught in between identities, wondering if you will ever really feel like yourself again. That's why she's so passionate about helping women ditch the rules of how they think they're supposed to live and rewrite the rulebook for the life they really want. Let's meet Whitney Baker. Hi, Whitney. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because reclaiming yourself is such an intriguing topic for today's conversation, and I really want to know more. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm delighted to be here and love this topic. Cannot wait to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want to start off by sharing a little bit about yourself and your story, your background, and what brought you to what you do today, and maybe a little bit about what you do today?
I'd be delighted to share that. I was an ambitious woman, like many of us are, and I'd known since I was a little girl that I wanted to change the world and share my voice. And in 2008, I graduated with a master's degree in journalism, and I thought life was about to begin, and we faced an economic collapse. After that, I really struggled and finally decided that I needed to shift gears. There were not jobs. It was not an industry that I could thrive in and pay the bills. I moved into marketing and PR and was like, okay, at that point, I didn't recognize it until in the future, but I'd kind of gone into that industry with a little bit of lack mentality, like I need to be doing something. But I built my career up there. I actually became a creative director for a global marketing agency. From the outside look, I had this cool job. And then I had two daughters, and they were born 14 months apart. And it really rocked my world. I feel like I was trying to be it all. And I was one of those women who felt very confused and conflicted, because some women, when they have kids, they're like, oh, I know I want to stay home and just focus on motherhood. And some women are like, career or bust. And I really wanted it all. I felt like I'd invested a lot of time and energy and felt like I had something to express and give outside of that role as mother. But I also really valued that presence and wanting to be there for my children. I decided I would try to be a pioneer and try everything. First, I went back 5 days. Then I did 4 days. Then I did something unprecedented and negotiated with my company to go 3 days. And here I was like, oh my gosh, I've got it made. I've finally cracked the code. And I was miserable because I was distracted with work at home because I was trying to keep on projects that really didn't work great. I wasn't doing as meaningful of work because it just wasn't suitable to part-time. And then when I was at work, I was kind of never in a routine of back and forth. So finally, I just hit a burnout, this isn't working point, and quit. You'd think that first, I just want to recognize that it was a privilege. I'd worked a long time. I had a partner and I had the capacity to quit. So felt very fortunate. But instead of being like, okay, I just need to pause, it was within a week of quitting my job that I was putting pressure on myself to build up my resume and start freelancing. And I really just had completely lost sight of who I was outside of these roles I was playing. My nervous system was in total fight or flight, and I didn't have the vision I do now for what was going on internally. I was just in a state of overwhelm. So I'll pause there, make sure that's making sense.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your journey so far. I feel that many, many women face some of those same struggles of choosing to have a family and then having to accommodate that somehow with work. Many don't have the choice to quit. They have to work. And trying to do that stretch between home and work. And very often it doesn't work very well at all. And we end up carrying the brunt of that, I think, very often, and come to stages like burnout or mental health challenges because of that. So thank you for sharing that so openly. And what happened after that? So you did put a lot of pressure on yourself to try and figure this out and know what you wanted to do and find yourself in all of this. So how did your story continue?
Yeah, it was trying to freelance. Again, I really hadn't untangled from that egoic sense of self that I'd locked into. And I now understand more clearly that I had from the cool job of working in an agency. I don't think that I loved the work as much as I love the idea of the work, but I didn't understand that until I had years of distance from that industry. I thought, I'm really not getting the type of freelance opportunities I want. I'm going to hire a career coach. I had never worked with a coach, never really knew what career coaches did. I was just ready. Meanwhile, it's the global pandemic and my kids are homeschooled during a time where I was thinking it would be the time to ramp up. So again, I think lots of women especially took a major mental health hit for so many reasons during that time. I am working with this career coach in my mind, thinking that she's going to help me identify bigger strategies or how I'm going to get the right work. And she was helpful. But as we continued talking and she's talking about networking and searching out the companies I'd want to work with, that sort of thing, she kind of looked at me and she's like, are you sure this is even what you want to be doing? And it was very confronting because I think from the beginning, I knew it was true that I'd kind of just gotten parlayed into this career that really wasn't attuned to my soul. But it was very, very scary to admit to myself, especially because I'd been scrambled in my work and starting over sounded awful. However, there was a moment when I thought I was a shoo-in for like a 6-week, they call it permalance. And I really, really thought this was it. Okay, I've got some momentum. And I ended up not getting the role. And I felt my entire body wash with relief. And that was a moment that I could not deny. And I will say that this happened over time. And during that time of quitting, even though I was putting pressure on myself, I also was opening up to reclaiming pieces of myself I realized I'd completely neglected during this crazy time of trying to build up my career and have young children at the same time. I'd just thrown a lot of important pieces of myself out the window. So it wasn't like all of a sudden I was working with this career coach and I had this light bulb moment. I really think some of the practices and work I was doing on myself in tandem with that undeniable sense of relief was just something I could not ignore. So that was definitely my turning point of, okay, what's next?
Yeah. And you touched on some important things here. And also, one of them being that you constantly felt that your nervous system was in this sort of fight or flight response. And that really keeps us in a state where we can't heal and we can't be very creative. I feel like that state really blocks us from a lot of those things and also blocks us from that piece of us that helps us find out who we are, to put those pieces back together and to really align and search for that part of ourselves. So I do, by the sounds of it, feel that you were in this state that was not very conducive to actually even just being yourself. So when you felt that sense of relief, that is a big pointer to the fact that you were not aligned with the path that you were walking. So did that in a way scare you at all, to feel that sense of relief and kind of think, okay, what am I going to do next? Or were you happy to dive into that sort of next chapter of actually figuring out what it is that you wanted and who you were?
Yeah, great questions. I mean, first of all, I think when women have babies, there's so much talk about getting your body back. And I'm all about movement and physical, and I celebrate that aspect of wellness. I think we dramatically overlook the impact of having a family and trying to balance that with patriarchal expectations of work and how that impacts mom's mental health. For me, just being able to recognize that nothing was wrong with me, that it was situational and that I was carrying a lot and there was a reason I was feeling out of sorts, was half the battle. Just being like, it's okay. Oh my gosh, there's a reason you feel this way. And that's why I'm so glad to be here. And I think that what you're doing on your podcast is so important, because many women suffer in silence because they just feel like after they have kids and they're juggling and they're stressed, that that's just how life is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you find any support as you were struggling through this within your family or your friend network? Or was this something that you were kind of going through by yourself and you didn't really know where to turn with that? Because I do feel, like you said, a lot of women suffer in silence. And even in their own families, it often feels like we don't get enough support in our friend circle as well. It's almost something that other women don't really like talking about because it makes us look weak or like we failed in some kind of way. So how was that for you? Did you have support in that time where you needed it?
What's interesting is it was when I finally slowed my roll and quit my job that I realized that I wasn't in a healthy state. When you're in that go, go, go mode, you're not in a reflective mode, just like we were talking about, with your nervous system always on edge and always activated. And something unfortunate that I did is I was so aware of what a privilege it was that I had a choice to push pause, that I put myself in this category of, I've got a healthy family. I'm able to have this choice to take a break of full-time work. Who am I to complain? And so I don't feel like I was totally honest with myself or anybody else with what was going on with me. I felt guilty that I wanted more, and I never stopped wanting more. It was just a weird, murky, frustrating time where I think if I would have been more open, that I would have found the support, but I kind of just tucked it all in because I was afraid of being judged as someone who has some privilege, and what would I be complaining about? So a message I just have for women is, if you're not feeling good, if you're not feeling like yourself, don't put yourself in a box of comparative suffering. You deserve, no matter where you are, to feel good. And beyond that, you feeling good, I think, is really important to you being of service in the world. So really, it's been a major mindset shift for me over the course of working on this stuff for a decade almost, is really getting women to rethink that piece, that it's not the all sacrificing mommy martyr if I don't talk about my struggles, but rather being honest and seeking out solutions. Because when you are giving from a place of being energized and feeling good and feeling authentic, that's when you can really be deeply of service to yourself and also to the people you love and in the world. So it's a big shift that took me a long time to really embrace and embody.
Yeah. I also feel like many workplaces aren't very conducive to that kind of shift and supporting transition from being a full-time worker to being a mother. There is still a lot to be worked on in many, many different places to support that. I think many people don't realize how much things actually change when you start having a family, how much we change as people, as women, but also how much that changes the dynamic within the family. And I do feel like a lot of the things around us are not very supportive of that whole situation. So that is a really unfortunate part, because as women, it doesn't allow us to sort of just gently explore this combination of motherhood and work. It has to always be this choice almost. So I'm very glad that you came to a point and you actually said, okay, I need to figure out what this is all about for me. And I need to be happy with that, because that can be such a difficult place to get to, and through many challenges and muddling through and driving ourselves crazy thinking we have to do it all. So I'm glad you found that. And how did you come to that place? You said it did take quite a long time. So what helped you along the way? What kind of things did you discover that helped you align, that finally helped you feel all right with the fact that you could choose that and that you could choose your happiness in this instance, and that would be just fine? So what did you find?
I'd always been someone who was a weird mix of external and loves people and can be in a room, but also have a quiet, reflective, curious, spiritual side. Ever since I was a little girl, I was scribbling in journals and had all these ideas. I realized that I'd eclipsed my connection both with my spiritual side and my creative side. Not my creative side that you think, oh, and I think this happens too, is women sometimes feel like they're supposed to get, even if you like your job. I was a creative director. You'd think that scratched my creative itch, but that was a different type of creativity because there was an expectation and I was producing. I'd really lost track of a sense of connection with creativity where I just got to create just because I enjoyed it. I'd stopped writing, which is a part of my life for many years before I'd been in this job and had kids. I completely stopped writing because I was so sick of thinking about writing, because that's what I did in the office place. But the office place writing I was doing had nothing to do with what my soul's calling to do was. Over time, I slowly just gave myself permission to inch by inch reclaim these pieces of myself. So I took a writing class. I joined a book club that had only to do with classic books. And it was just this intellectual conversation piece that I realized I was really missing in my life, and this connection. I read a ton. I started a journaling practice. I got back into all my books and spiritual teachers that I'd kind of let collect dust on my shelves. And then I started meditating, and I started meditating regularly. And I realized that it was a portal for me. As I got more acclimated with the practice, I realized that it gave me a sense of clarity, not only with what I wanted in the world, but with who I was and how I was longing to express. I decided to take meditation a lot more seriously. I did a 2-week immersive where I really get best practices. And over time, it just became one of the most important tools for me and my own personal and spiritual growth. So that's why you can tell with the context of where I was and where I am now, why I eventually became a certified meditation teacher. And it's a very important tool that I share and teach with my own clients today.
That sounds really fascinating. And how did you find meditation worked out for you in the beginning? So I am aware that many people who, especially if they have had some mental health challenges or they have anxiety, that it can be very difficult to get started with meditation, because just being with yourself in that space can be very scary in the beginning. How was that for you? How was your experience with that in the beginning? And How do you help your clients get started depending on where they are in their lives?
Yeah, I want to validate that because it is very confronting for some people, and everybody's experience with meditation is different. I will say sometimes when you think about the type of person who gets in bed, turns off the light, and all of a sudden their thoughts are just everywhere and they can't go to sleep. That's the best analogy I've had for somebody who is kind of in that anxious, on the go, nervous system pumped up mode, trying to meditate. I would say that, first of all, learning that thoughts aren't our enemy is sometimes the key that helps people understand a meditation practice. I mean, thoughts remind us we're alive. It's all good. The biggest myth that I wish I could just like erase out of everybody's mind is that I can't meditate because I have too many thoughts. Well, my advice and how I would encourage people to get started is, first of all, acknowledge that thoughts are a good thing and they're normal and they're natural. We can get into as much best practice as you want, but basically, just knowing thoughts are going to be part of your meditating experience, unless you're a monk somewhere, just accepting that it's going to be part of the experience and knowing that you can gently witness, but not get attached to your thoughts and just come back to your anchor, which is usually a mantra or your breath. And practicing that during your meditation can really change how you look at it. Another mindset shift in terms of getting people started is remembering that why we're all meditating is so that we can live better in our lives and we can express better and we can be better. And a complaint I often hear from my clients who are women, I do only work with women, is they hustle around all day and then they're finally ready to sit down to the dinner table and connect with their partner or connect to their children. And their mind is going a mile a minute and they're thinking about that sour email someone sent them, or they're worrying about their day tomorrow and they don't have an ability to drop in. One way that I encourage those type of women to think about meditation is a practice knowing that your mind by nature is going to get distracted. And when you practice in meditation, okay, time to come back, drop back to my anchor. You're also practicing your ability to witness when you get distracted and taken away from the present moment in real life. So you're practicing. And to me, sometimes thinking about it that way can help women really connect with the practice because that's an outcome that I think we're all going for.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do like that. And the ability to be present in the now is something that when we have a lot of anxiety or we are feeling burnt out or have those challenges, it's something that's very difficult to do in that moment of time. So I like the idea of using meditation to kind of ease ourselves into that path. So that's a really great idea. So how did meditation affect you then? How did it change your life when you started the meditation practice? Did you notice anything? Did you find benefits in it as you were searching for your identity and for your path? What did you find in this meditation practice for yourself?
I think in the beginning, the number one thing meditation helped me with was a feeling of reactivity. It's like reactivity. So, when you're in a high stress environment in a demanding role for work and you've got little kids, all you want to do is be creative and be kind and be present. But when you've got that much adrenaline pumping through your veins, and again, you're in fight or flight and facing symptoms of anxiety, it's like small things can set you off and irritate you disproportionately. And then I think that women, in my experience, again, I'm not a clinician on this, but in my experience, what happens with women is they do what my teacher, David G., calls scorch the village. They get upset, they lose their temper, they say something they didn't mean to say. And then it's not only that, it's they beat themselves up because that's not how they want to show up. That's not who they are. But they're juggling, they're carrying so much. They're just at capacity. They're tapped. Nobody's taught them tools to really retreat and give themselves some sacred rest is what I would call it. And that self-connection. For me, the biggest game changer was that over time, meditation, it's like a drip in the bucket. It's a practice. That's why it's called a practice for a reason. You're not going to feel crazy different after one meditation session. But over time, it allows you to just have more spaciousness. And just my baseline for peace and calm definitely went to a different place. That's major. For the average woman, your baseline, where you're at in terms of just like peace, calm, much easier. And then your ability to respond versus react, game changer.
Yeah. Again, there are those things that you were talking about before when the nervous system is dysregulated. Those are all the things that we're experiencing then in our lives. So it sounds like meditation can really help us reset and come back to a place where we can start from, where we can start looking after ourselves, where we can start that path of self-discovery, where we can look after our families better. So it sounds like a really, really wonderful tool. And some people think meditation is somewhat of a woo-woo experience, and they think of just monks sitting there in robes and practicing. So are there some myths that we can dispel today around meditation that might make this a bit easier for people to get started with?
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that because some people that I work with have a notion that meditation is going to cause them to lose their edge. I think that some people like that feeling of being under pressure. And I just want to say that meditation does help mitigate stress. There's tons of studies and it's well proven. There's two different kinds of stress. I won't go too far into this, but a little bit of stress is called eustress. It's good stress. It's like, oh, I'm about to give the presentation. Okay, got a little fire. What meditation helps with stress-wise is chronic stress reduction. And I don't think that there's anybody who could argue that chronic stress that's just ongoing all the time with no end and no beginning in sight is healthy for anybody. What I would say to that stereotype is I'm a creative person. And I actually think that when we're able to be more tapped in, tuned on, calm, it's like this feeling of being energized and anchored. And you can think more clearly. And I think that you're more productive because you're not letting stress rule the roost, right? And I think that people are usually shocked to hear, not to name drop, but across everything from Silicon Valley execs to thought leaders across any industry, meditation is actors. So many people, the more I'm in this world, so many people that are at the apex of their game across industries use meditation as kind of a quiet secret weapon versus something that's going to dull their ability to make an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that it's also being offered, and I've heard like universities are offering that, workplaces are offering it. So the benefits of meditation are very, I think, well studied at this point and very well known. So don't hesitate. Dip your toes into meditation. Find something where you can start and see what kind of impact that makes in your lives if you're listening to Whitney talking about meditation here. And you work with clients. You also utilize meditation with your clients. So what kind of programs and services do you offer, and how could clients work with you if they were inspired by listening to you speak about this? How can they get in touch with you? How can they work with you?
Yeah. So right now, my primary focus is working with women who want to reclaim a sense of self. And oftentimes it's women who have had one of those transitions where it's an eye opener and they realize that a lot of how they're showing up is outdated and it's scary, but maybe they forgot what they even like, or they don't want to go backwards, but it just feels bizarre to think, hey, I can be creative. I can be playful. I can be all these things. And I know I want to show up better, but it's overwhelming and I don't know where to start. I work in groups, which I love because sometimes people ask questions we don't even know we had. And also, it's just so empowering to see ourselves in others. We go back to that motherhood journey I had. People are so alone, and that's why they don't talk. They feel like they don't want to be judged. They feel like nobody will understand them. Almost every woman has gone through some of this before at some juncture in their life. I really encourage women to find me Instagram, I think at Whitney Woman. I'm always offering a mix of my signature 6-week group programs or just one-off workshops so they can get a toe in the water, because sometimes long-term commitment isn't everybody's jam. You like to kind of feel things out. So yeah, I really love to work with clients, and my special sauce is making self-exploration feel accessible, even playful and fun. I think back to these stereotypes, I want to equip the modern woman with tools and practices that support them in ways that just blend seamlessly into their day-to-day life. They don't need to take a 6-month sojourn to a mountain. If you can swing that, go for it, girl. But I just want to equip women with these tools that I wish I would have had during several transitions in my life where I needed the support. I really think when we empower women in this way, it's good not only for them, it's good for us. We need their creativity, we need their contributions, and we want them operating in a way where they can give from a place of wholeness.
Yeah, that sounds like something we could all use in this world. So yeah, that is amazing. And you are also a podcaster yourself. You have a podcast. Tell us about that.
Thank you. I'm so passionate about podcasting. Since you guys were part of this whole conversation, you'll know that that journalist in me was just waiting to express. I love my podcast. It's called Electric Ideas, and it's all about lighting women up with a new sense of possibility. It has a lot of topics to do with women's holistic wellness, but also a special focus on personal and spiritual and creative development and reclamation. I'd love for anybody to tune in.
Amazing. And we, of course, will be linking to all of Whitney's offerings in the show notes. So be sure to check there on how you can connect with her on the socials for her programs and how you can tune into her podcast. I'm sure that there are so many resources and great episodes that our listeners can listen to now that they've kind of heard your story and understand how that all comes together. So yeah, I'd love to share that, put that out there, and hopefully we'll do a bit of a cross swap with our listeners and they come in and listen to Electric Ideas. And be sure to check the show notes. We'll put the links there for you so you can find all that really easily. Well, this has been another incredible episode, and I really hope our listeners have enjoyed our journey into reclaiming yourself as much as I have. It was so great to get to know more about you on this podcast and hear your story and how that all comes together into what you do today and how you are shining your light in this world today. So thank you so much for being here today, Whitney, and sharing all this wisdom with us. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Absolutely as well. And take really good care of yourself. And hopefully we get to do this again soon. I feel like there are so many more things that we can talk about on this journey of reclaiming yourself. I feel like there are a few more episodes in there. So thank you so much and take care.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejourney.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.